Good evening, and welcome to another episode of the Mancave Podcast. We're live here at Mount Calvary Missionary Baptist Church, 3375 Pastor S.N. Winston Senior Way in Dayton, Ohio, where Pastor Samuel N. Winston Jr. is our pastor. Tonight, I think we have a very exciting podcast for you. We have three sets of father and sons, and our discussion this evening will be building a legacy. What will I leave? I'm Deacon Harvey Wortham. I'll be your facilitator for this evening, and I'll let our panelists introduce themselves.
Clinton Coble.
Davon Coble.
Jabbar Jenkins.
Jaden Jenkins.
Myron Sander for the second.
Myron Sander for the first.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. We'll start where our topic is building a legacy. What will I leave behind? First thing I want to ask is, what is a legacy? What is a legacy? Anyone can address that starting out.
All right, I guess I'll start it off. I believe a legacy is when you pass down your wisdom, values, innovations, and collaborations down to the next generation of yourself. It's a tie point from where you tie your ancestry towards the future of what's going to be. I think that's a very simple answer right there. There you go. That's legacy.
Anyone else want to give their opinion on how they view a legacy?
I can totally agree with you, sir, but another portion of a legacy is actually what your children can take on further than yourself that will be remembered of you. Just the same sentiments as yourself.
Anyone else?
There's also a spiritual fact that comes along with that, a spiritual legacy that you leave in the hearts of your family, your children, your generations after you. I was very fortunate to grow up in a household who knew and loved the Lord, and my parents grew up in a household who knew and loved the Lord, and so on and so forth. So with generational, people talk about generational curses all the time. There's also such a thing as generational blessings. So if you instill that in your children, then those apples don't fall too far from the tree. So I think that's also a legacy that we want to make sure we drill in to our children when they're younger, so when they get older, they do not depart from it.
Okay, very well. Yes.
And I agree on that because the legacy starts when you're young, because we're building into, our children, what our legacy is. And a lot of times they're going to follow what we do. So, if I'm an angry person all the time, I'm building a legacy of anger into my children. So it's, a lot of times we talk about legacy being, monetary, financial. And I'll say a majority of people, when you said legacy, that's the first thing that they think of. But it is a lot more than just money. Your attitudes, how you're presenting yourself, actually your reputation that you're leaving is a legacy that you're building.
Okay, very good. I've heard it said that you start our legacy from birth. What do you guys think about that? You agree or disagree? Your thoughts?
Honestly, I totally agree that it starts at birth, because if you don't have the right person in front of you, sometimes you don't know which way to go necessarily. For myself, when it comes to legacy, it started at a young age because of discipline. And I think everybody here can kind of understand that starting at such a young age to teach a young child in a way they should come up, it will continue on. So yes, it's at birth.
I'm going to say legacy actually starts right around elementary school. Because at birth, of course, none of us have the option of choosing who our parents are going to be. But at the same time, you're too young to know what's going on. And some children are, unfortunately, birthed and then set up with somebody completely different from who they, were originally intended to be with. So your legacy generally starts out when you have the mindset of going to school, building yourself up, and you're seeing other representations in this world of what's going on, and you start to decide to yourself like, hey, I want to be like this person, Or if I saw my favorite wrestler on TV, oh, I want to be like, Stone Cold Steve Austin or the Hulk Hogan. That's where, when your mind starts to see and contemplate the difference between people and aspects in life, that's when your true legacy begins. Yes, you can say it's at birth. I totally get that. But I'm saying for the child in the mindset, it's going to start coming to fruition in elementary school. Personal opinion only.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I believe like it definitely starts at like that age around like 6 or 7 when the kid's kind of like that kid gets his own like conscious thoughts. Like he starts having role models, people he looks up to. Because I feel like something about like legacy, I think it does start it's about like also where you came from. That's what's gonna be looked at too. I feel like when you speak on a legacy, that all starts like when someone's a child, who they looked up to, the people they had around them. So yeah, that's just I think it starts like 6 or 7, like that age range is when legacy like kind of starts, because it's where that person came from. So yeah.
Let me ask, are you asking, does my legacy start at that age? Or are you asking, is that the time when I start influencing the next generation with my legacy?
It can start, when I say start at birth, that's when you start noticing things, developing behavior, watching other people. You pick up those habits, be they good or bad, because you are associated with what you see and the people you are around. So as a child, you notice those things, and you will start acting in that way if you don't have someone in your life that influence you or have a better impact on your life. I think this is a question from the audience.
Yes, is legacy automatic?
Absolutely not. Legacy is not automatic by any means, in my personal opinion. And the reason why I say that is because some kids, of course, we all are born in sin. So you're going to do the wrong thing the first time anyways. But then you have some parents that have raised you to a point where they consider the streets as the most educated thing you need to know, where another man can consider that his education is the most educated thing you need to know. And then you have to decipher for yourself, which one do I let rule my life? Valuing my education going forward, to help people, or my reputation in the streets. And kids can break away from that because I'm living proof of one of them. If you grew up on Gettysburg, you either down or you not down. But that didn't stop me from joining the military, getting a college education, and completely changing the dynamic that was set out for me in the first place. So there's my answer.
So Jabbar, I think you're saying it, but I think it's not a no. Yeah, your legacy is built no matter what you do. It's either good or bad. You chose a good legacy to leave behind. But how you act and how you behave and how you influence others and what people think of you is your legacy. To me, in my eyes, that's the way I view legacy, whether it's a negative one or positive one. We all know individuals who have a legacy that we grew up with that wasn't the best, the most shining example. They left a legacy, but it wasn't a positive one. Hopefully, our legacies could be different.
Yeah, I agree, because I've heard it said, and I consider it a fact. The legacy that you leave is the perception that other people have of you. You may think that you're all it, but what do those people that see you, how do they perceive you? Are you all that to them, or are you a bum, or you're a good guy? It's the perception that you leave behind that other people have of you. It's a question from the audience. Yes, sir.
I was just here thinking, when I was growing up, I didn't know what was a legacy was as a kid, because those type of things did not come into my mind. But then as I grew up and became an adult and realized what an adult should do and got married and started having a family, that's when it kind of hit me, what am I gonna leave back for my kids and grandkids? So as I was growing up, those type of things never hit me was what type of legacy am I gonna leave for my kids? Only thing I can remember, my grandparents, my mother, and them, they left a legacy for me, but it wasn't me gathering that information until I got an adult and had kids myself. Then I realized I should try to do something so my kids, grandkids, can be proud of me of what I left, show them the way that I was shown to the church, and do the right thing in life. So as a kid, I didn't know what a legacy was. I never thought about that.
Yes, sir.
I just want to ask the question, excuse me, what causes a man to start to think about a legacy or leaving a legacy?
Anyone want to address that?
I think like what causes the man to start thinking about legacy is like when he starts to realize how like other things have an impact on his life. So like when you start like looking up, doesn't even have to be like a father figure or a parent figure. When you start looking up to other people and seeing what like other people are left, I feel like that starts like to cause a person to self-reflect and be like, what am I gonna leave for this world? You know, you just start self-reflecting. So I feel like it's kind of something that starts a chain reaction within people, just seeing what other people have left, and then you start to think like, you know, what am I gonna leave, or what do I want to leave? Like if you see something like that you just don't like and something you want to change in the world, that's when you start to think on your legacy, when you start to see something that you want to change. So I'd say that.
Very good. You have a question?
I definitely like that. And totally agree with you on that. For me, it was definitely having, your firstborn, and you realize certain things you're doing when you got this baby into the world. You're like, whoa, let me slow down on that. You try to change it up a little bit for you, because now I'm an example for somebody where beforehand you're all on your own. You could do what you want. And I think that was just like the shining moment for my life, especially I remember, this young man at about 6 months old, and he loved The Lion King halfway to death. And I was like, this movie, I've seen it 1,000 times, but he's always cries when Mufasa's about to die, and I'm just like, what's wrong with you? I don't understand. But it made me realize that even though he's calling me daddy, that's what he's seeing on that TV. He's seeing a father figure about to perish, and he ain't want that to happen. I was like, oh, crap. Well, so I started working out. I was like, I ain't trying to check out early, but for me, that was just a turning point. It was like, let me start being better with myself so he has something to follow through with.
Good. I noticed in you guys addressing what is a legacy, thing that caught my attention, no one mentioned wealth, money, or property. It was all these other values that come into play to let folks know there's more to a legacy than money or property. And you guys, everyone here has touched on other aspects of a legacy. Your values, the respect, what other people think of you, what you want to leave behind for your loved one. And I like that, because you ask the average person, what is legacy? What do you want to leave behind? Well, man, I don't have any money. I don't have any property. And that's the first thing come to their mind is money or property, and it's much more than that. And apparently you guys see that, and you're addressing it in the lives and how you carry yourselves. You got another question?
Is legacy a man thing, a male thing?
Anybody want to address that?
From being a father that has 3 daughters, I'm going to say no, because I expect some of my daughters to carry on the legacy that I'm trying to provide. Now, hopefully, they will get married, and then they can have other values, but it's something that I want to bestow upon them that they have and they can take with them. So legacy, no, it's not just a male thing.
Yeah, because legacy, like you said earlier, it's more than that. It's your values, your standards. That's a big part of it. And that's the thing that you want to pass down to the next generation. They can build on that because they're starting from a foundation, a solid foundation. So, they're not talking about the wealth and all this other stuff, but those values, those ethics play a major part, I think, as a person grows, because that's the building block for them. Yes, sir.
But yeah, I just wanted to back up what he was saying. I feel like legacy definitely isn't only a man thing. It's just just how it comes back to how I think legacy. I never thought of it with wealth, with what you had. it's like the impact you leave on the world and what people are going to perceive you for. That's what I always thought legacy was personally. Feel like that's quite obvious because like one of the most like memorable people that as a community we can think about is Rosa Parks. No one will forever forget her legacy, and she didn't have to be the most wealthy person. It's like what she did, how she made that stand. No one's ever gonna forget that. So I feel like anyone, man or woman, can create a legacy.
And I think it's a building block, because you have to think about a legacy and what it is, before you can start talking to somebody else about a legacy. We go through a long time in life, and you hear the word legacy, but at some point it clicks in, and then you think, okay, I'm gonna build, my legacy either this way or that way, but then I got to look down the road. I'm a grandfather. So, my son's here, but I'm also looking down the road when I'm building that legacy because I might not be around a long time as those grandkids grow up. But, what I leave, is that's how they're going to remember me. That's how they're going to see me. So it's a building block into the life that I have, and it really affects them down the road because I go back to anger again. If granddad was angry, and then dad around here, some of that spills over to him. When they ask, well, what about your grandfather? What about your father? And all he's thinking, oh man, he's just an angry guy. That was his legacy. He's always angry. So we have to start thinking about it not just for the next generation, but for the generation after that, and down the road.
And furthermore, I believe in everything everyone said is spot on. But for those who you don't even know are watching you, there are so many young men and young women who attend service, who are in your day-to-day lives, maybe at the school that you work in or the job that you work in, who are paying attention to how you're living your life. And they're modeling themselves after you in some fashion. Maybe they don't have a role model. They don't have anybody positive to look at. So they're watching you from a distance. So your legacy is carried on even through those individuals, through the deacons that they don't think anybody's paying attention when you're holding the door open for a lady, for the individuals who, when you see someone helping out someone who's homeless and someone else happens to watch you do that, and then they want to do the same. That's a legacy that gets poured on, even though it's not your direct children or you're not doing it to make sure that someone understands that this is a good thing. You're just doing it because it is who you are, and other people see that and they act in that manner. I think that's also legacy too.
I've heard it said, and I know all you guys have too, it doesn't matter when I'm dead, I'm gone. How do you feel about that in terms of a legacy?
Well, all you have is your name, right? So they said, if you die twice, once when they bury you, and the second time's the last time someone says your name, right? So what have you done on this earth for someone to keep saying your name? I had a fantastic role model as a father who adopted me as my grandfather, David Coble. I will say his name as much as I can, and his father, I was blessed enough to know my great-grandfather, Chester Coble. And because of the legacy he built, my children know their name. They see their photos everywhere. If I live in the Lord will, my children's children will know their name, and so on and so forth, and teach them what they taught me, and they live on through me in the teachings of my aunts and my uncles and my mother and father. So no, it doesn't matter whether you're here or not here. What you leave behind is so precious, so precious.
So you were saying then that most people that are concerned to care want to know that when they're gone, their life had meaning to other folk. Anybody want to add to that in Pacific?
Ask that question one more time, just so I make sure I have it clear.
Most folk want to know that when they're gone, their life had meaning. When they're dead and gone, folk will remember some of the positive things they did, the impact that they had on other folks' lives. Not that Joe Blow that, yeah, when I'm dead, I'm gone. It don't matter.
Yeah, I think they do. You want to people to know, or you want to know yourself that you did impact somebody's life a lot of time in a positive way. And because I'm not here, as Clinton said, there's always somebody watching. You may not see them, but they're watching you. I've had guys say, I was a coach, and I coached this young man over here, and then way down the road, he come back, well, coach, I remember when you did this. I remember when you did that. You said this, you said that, and you didn't even know that he was paying attention. So you want to feel that your life has made an impact. We're here, and you just don't want to be existing, on this earth, So yes, we want our lives to mean something to our children, our grandchildren, and to those that are watching you when you're not looking.
Absolutely. I'm in turn inclined to 100% agree with you on that. And I think we also need to look at the fact that there are some people in this world that are simply agents of chaos, and their legacy is to make sure you have a lasting impression of them terrorizing your life. And I say that, jokingly, of course, but it's also true at the same time. Like for my father, his favorite word was no. And this is all day, every day, the entire duration of my life, just no, no, no. And when he finally said yes, it was like a light bulb went off my head. I'm like, did I do something right? And he's just like, no, but you needed to hear it. So what I'm saying is some people do that, just so you have something. It's something, it can be negative or it can be positive, but regardless, it's something that's left behind that you can remember them by. And despite how much, my dad always said no, I know in his heart, he really meant yes, you're fine. So just wanted to throw that out there, food for thought for people.
What do you think your associates or the people you're hanging around with, what impact do they have on your life?
As I think, what's the best way to say that is you are who you hang around. I think that's the best way. And in essence, they have the most impact on your life because you're going to do what your group is going to do. 9 times out of 10. There's 3 or 4 guys together, and 3 of them like football. The others are going to try to like football. And I'm living proof of that one because I don't watch football at all. Nobody get mad in here. Don't jump all at once. But when I'm around the fellas, all of a sudden I can pick up the names. I know what's going on. But if it was me by myself, then it's gone in the wind. And I notice the same thing with them when they're around me. If I'm watching like my WrestleMania or something, all of a sudden they know all the wrestlers' names. But beforehand, it was completely gone. So who you hang around really does influence, your life.
Yeah, I raised that question because who you hang around with helps to develop your legacy. That's who folk will remember you as, be it good or bad. When they think about you, they're going to think about the people you hang around with, what you did with them, whether you actually was engaging with some of the things they've done that were bad or not, doesn't matter. What the group did now becomes what you did. So yeah, I think the people you hang around with, your associate has a big impact on the legacies that you. So you have to be careful with who you run with because it affects the legacy you're going to leave behind, whether you're aware of it or not. So we have, as men, we have to be conscious of that because that's going to carry on after we're gone. People were, man, he ran around with that group, and this is all they did. And that's what everybody's going to remember you as because that's what people are going to talk about because that's what they hear, that's what other folk thought of you, and that's what's going to be passed on with your name. That's going to be a tag on your name. He hung with this group, and they were no good. So, yeah, you have to be careful of that.
Yeah, and I say that definitely to young men and women that are joining college. When you join certain organizations in your college, you become fully associated that whether it's on the good side of things or on the bad side of things. You know, we see our pastor, he joined Alpha Phi Alpha. All it takes is one person to do something wrong in Alpha, and then all the Alphas are terrible now. So just keep that in mind when you're joining these different social organizations out there. The most thing people are going to remember up front is the negative first, and then the positive. So think on that.
I have a question from the audience here.
When does legacy start? I keep hearing from the panel, it sounds like you got to leave here, get out of here, become absent for legacy to kick in. Is that when legacy starts upon death or absence?
I think if anything, your legacy starts right here. If I was going to be honest, it starts with like where you came up from, because all those people you came up from, like that's who knew you first, and then those on top of that, those people know you best. So like if anything, like if you ever see like a more famous person, like it's always people who like knew them growing up who are going to have the most to say. That also affects your legacy. But I really do I think legacy starts here, like just where you're from. That's where it starts, and that's where it's the most impactful too.
Another question from the audience.
You know, as when you talk about legacy, mine started from when I was a kid, my father. Okay? It made a lot of difference in me how I went on in life is what I was taught. Now, one of the things, when I grew up and when I came to bigger towns, you know, hanging around with crowds wasn't my thing because I saw them smoking, drinking, doing a whole lot of things. And when I do that, it would make me feel guilty because I remember what Dad taught me. And I think it saved me from a lot of stuff, being able to go out and be on my own. I have few friends that I thought was decent friends, and you know, and that saved me a lot of trouble because it could have been totally different. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. I think personally, a legacy begins in the person when someone reminds them of their action. So if you made that bomb macaroni and cheese, and they said, last year you made that macaroni and cheese so good, Dave. Legacy has now begun. I just wanted to give a solid pinpoint example of where it begins. As soon as somebody reminds you, that's what you did. Start treading your path lightly.
And I think a little bit differently. A legacy begins when you realize what a legacy is. You know, internally, you know, yeah, you're going to do things. We have habits, you know, things that we're going to do, you know, and people will talk about, well, this person was this way, this person was that way, but that doesn't mean that they're leaving a legacy. That's leaving an idea of how they lived, you know. But a legacy is to me is something positive that you're doing, you know, to leave saying I was here, you know, I made I'm on this planet, you know. So in my mind, that's when I start, you know, as Jabbar said earlier, you know, when he had his first child. And for a lot of men, you know, we go out here and we do a lot of things, but when you have that child, that changes you. You know, you might be running the streets, you might be irresponsible, you know, but have a child and then something with men clicks, you know. Now boys, you go out and you have, you know, I said boys, you go out and you have a child, you're still gonna run around like a boy. But a man, when he realizes I'm responsible for somebody else, you know, they can't do anything, but I'm responsible because I brought that child into this world. For me, that's when you think, well, wait a minute now, I brought a child into the world. Or, you know, so I start to think about, well, that legacy that I'm leaving, you know, that example that I'm showing that child because I might not be there when they get older, but that child wants to know, what about my dad? What was he like? And that's when your legacy starts kicking in. It's when they start inquiring about, what you're doing, and you start thinking about, well, hey, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that, because I want to impact, my family or impact somebody down the road.
Okay, so the question originally was, when does your legacy start? Well, I feel like everybody's answer is kind of different, but as far as my standpoint on that, mine started when I was a kid. Like, I remember going to school. Teachers would always, know who my father was. They would always know who my father was, right? And the image my father showed other people, right? So eventually I heard that enough, and I kind of started to think, okay, so what was my father known for, right? And it was always positive. But then I remembered my dad learned that from his dad. So it was like, okay, so what do people start to think of me? And that's when it really started to sink in. Like, okay, I didn't know what legacy was at that time, but I knew how I wanted to be looked at in the eyes of others, not based off my dad, but what my dad could teach me and then what I could also add to the table, right? So I feel like, it just varies depending on the person.
You got a question? Oh. I think that in building a legacy, to me, I think it's not so much that I'm building a legacy when I'm leaving behind. It's how I live my life on a daily basis. I'm thinking about, when I'm gone, when I'm going to leave, how am I living my life now? What are people thinking about the things that I do, be they good or bad? Because that's what folk are going to remember. The legacy is what I leave behind, how people think about me after I'm gone. While I'm here, I'm working to do the best that I can, have a positive impact on the ones that I love, the people I'm around, so that when I'm gone, when they think about me, they'll think about the things that I did while I was here. So I'm not thinking about the legacy. I'm thinking about trying to live the best life I can now, so that when I'm gone, it's people how they remembered me. So because you see a lot of rich folk that got money and they do all kind of crazy stuff, and they're gonna leave the legacy. Yeah, he was rich, had tons of money he left to get. Man, but he was a terrible person. Had tons of money, but he was a terrible person. So it's the impression that you leave behind for other folk. Other folk would dictate to what your legacy really was. It's not what we think about, but it's what other folk think of us. So we can think we're a gem, we're all that. But how do other folks see us? He was stuck up. He thought he was, this, or he thought he was that, and may have been the opposite. So it's what other folk think of us, how other folk view us, is what really develops and what the legacy is built from. Not what we think or do. We're doing the best that we can, but it's how other folk view us.
And just keep in mind, as your legacy progresses, there is time periods to legacy. So if you're in college for a certain time period, and then those people don't see you anymore, they're only going to remember what you did in college. So your legacy has to progress past that. So when they see you again, they say, oh, you changed. But if not, just remember, there's a time constraint on everything. Just like high school, you were the best wrestler there. College, you hated all women. Become a man, all of a sudden you're a doctor and you're the greatest thing since sliced bread. It really depends on what time period that person was in your life for them to have that lasting legacy impression of you. So, do right.
Question.
Can we change our legacy as we go along, or is it just a lifestyle and it continues?
I believe that you can change it. Earlier, he was talking about how people around you, and I think that as time periods go along, you can have more people become influential in your life. So then they may then determine, or I may choose, hey, this particular individual, I kind of like how they set their family up. I love the fact that you're a little bit more disciplined, or that person has a lot more respect, and that's kind of what will change.
Many have tried and all have fallen short of the glory of God, right? Every single one of us up here have been sinners. Everyone up here has sinned and will sin again. So we all had a past. some things that we were proud of, some things we weren't proud of. As we get older, we want to try to do better and be a better representation of our name. So I can say, yeah, absolutely, legacy changes. I remember there was a time when I was younger, I would curse like all the time. Every other word out of my mouth was a swear word. Now it's so foreign to me, right? There are so many different things that we do with our legacy that we don't even pay attention to, but it's how we evolve as people, as we try to get closer to God and try to be more like our Father, as we start to dive into what the Scripture says, and as we start looking at our children and how they are paying attention to us, and how others are receiving us. How I had the pleasure of staying with my aunt and uncle when I was in my late teens. And my uncle James, he passed away, and I call my aunt my mom, and she gave up. She went up and spoke at his funeral, and that moment changed me because of how eloquently she spoke about her husband. And at that moment, I just started thinking, man, I really want my wife to be able to speak that way about me. That started to change me. And you constantly evolve to be better. So it's not just a one-time thing. What you do right now doesn't cement your legacy forever. So yes, you absolutely can change your legacy depending on the factors and everything else that goes on around you. I know we got a bunch of other questions too.
Go ahead, and we'll come to the next one.
I just wanted to say, in spite of all, we are growing up and we have a legacy. In the end, I think we also have to remember we have to please God too, as we have these legacy and go on with our life. We don't have to worry about pleasing man and woman. We got to please this God with our legacy, and that's the main thing. So God will be pleased with what we're doing here.
Was there another question? Hearing this comment, would you guys agree that pleasing God is more important than the legacy? Because I think if we're pleasing God, that's part of our legacy. That is the legacy. Because if we're a godly man trying to please God, all this other stuff doesn't matter. Doesn't matter whether you're rich, whether you're poor. Folk are going to remember you for the type of person you were. He was a godly man. He didn't have a lot of money, but he did this. He shared that. He was open to this. He was open to that. That's the legacy. He was a godly man. Not that he was a rich man or he was a poor man, but he was a godly man. Yes, sir.
Is legacy and memory the same words?
I wouldn't say they're the same words, but they're like intertwined with each other. Because like memory, I feel like that's more of a short-term thing. Like you can have a memory of someone, but that can be completely different from their legacy that they have like bestowed upon a whole group of people or a whole bunch of people. Because you can have a memory of someone for a bad thing they did, but their legacy could be a great person. Because just like we established earlier, your legacy can change. So yeah, that's my take on that.
I don't think they're the same words. You know, like you said, you remember people, but that doesn't mean because you remember them that that's their legacy. You remember things about them, you know, but they're building a legacy. They're building the values in their life. You talk about pleasing God. You know, if we're living the lifestyle that He says we should be living, then we're pleasing God. And if we're pleasing Him and living a certain lifestyle, then we are leaving a legacy, you know, of how we want people to see us, you know. So it's not about we just remember him. I remember he was a good guy, you know, but that doesn't mean, you know, he left a legacy. You know, his legacy could be totally different from what he actually lived, you know. So I see him here, you know, but then I don't see him over here, and somebody else see him differently. So it's that continuity of how you're living.
Any other comments on that? So what I'm hearing, where I think I'm getting from this is that memory is part of your legacy based on who you're talking to, because other folk may see you differently. That's not your complete legacy, but that is a part of it based on who is talking about you.
I remember him back in the day. You know, we did this back in the day. I remember, you know, but then his legacy, he changed. We said legacy can change. So he changed as he went on in life, you know. And you can remember a lot of things about him before I changed, you know, before I thought about, you know, I wanted to leave a legacy, you know, I was out doing this, I was out doing that. That's what some people remember, but that doesn't mean that that's his legacy.
So I felt like it's kind of hard for me to answer at first because I was kind of thinking, but an example kind of came to my mind. So random example, let's say a car mechanic. My dad's car mechanic, right? We share the same car mechanic. Let's say my dad was like, okay, like, you know who AJ is, my car mechanic. He was like, you know he passed, right? I'd be like, yeah, no, I mean, I remember him, right? But then a legacy could be like, oh yeah, like he's the person who showed me how to, you know, change my car oil, right? Like it's something what somebody passes on. That's what I think. It's easy for you to be like, oh yeah, I remember him. Like we had a couple of conversations in the past, can't really tell you what they were about, but like if somebody did something to like really change you, as far as like you know how to change your car oil or you know how to change out a tire. That legacy, I feel like those are totally different things. So it was a little tricky at first, but I understand it now.
So would you agree that it's the history of your life based on other people when they came into your life? Like I heard someone say, yo, when I was in college or high school, I was this way. When I was in college, I did something differently. Now I'm out in the real world working, raising a family. I'm yet a different person. I've evolved. So the legacy is the history of your life and how folk perceive you. You know, when I was 19, you may have been wild and crazy. When you were in college, you started changing. You were an excellent wrestler in college. Now that you're out, you're a totally different person. You're a business person. You're internationally known, but you may be a terrible individual personally, good businessman, but you're a terrible person. So when folk look at your life, well, I remember when he was in high school, he was this way. In college, he did that. You know, when he became a businessman, he raised all kind of money, rich, wealthy. But man, as an individual, I didn't want to be around him. He really smelled the joint up. So when folks start looking at your life, it changes, depends on when they came into your life. So when you talk about the legacy, it will change based on when you encounter people. So different people will see you differently. Your legacy will change over the course of your life based on how you lived it. So the person that see you in high school, that's all they know you for. The person see you when you were a business person, that's what they know you for. They couldn't tell me anything about you in high school, college. Man, he was a great businessman. Didn't make millions of dollars. And that's all he's concerned about. Somebody else, yeah, he was rich, but man, that guy was terrible. Yeah, he had money, but he was terrible. Let me tell you, he backstabbed this person. He did this to another person, stepped over people to get where he's at. Yeah, I don't want to be around him. So it will change based on where folk met you in the course of your life. So to me, yeah, your legacy will change based on when people encountered you in your life.
You actually took all the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say it's always based on the time period that they met you. So excellent right there. I don't really have anything further to add to it.
Any other questions? Any comments? I have one. I've heard, and you tell me if you've heard the term a legacy letter or ethics letter. What would that mean to you as an individual? A legacy letter or ethics letter that one would write.
Yeah, I've never.
No, that's,
I heard that and I had to check it out. It's a letter that one will write prior to their death that will give their loved ones their last thoughts and concern about how they lived their life.
Oh, so like their will and testament. Gotcha.
Yeah, but it's much shorter. It's no legal. It's not a binding document. It's just that person leaving his thoughts of how he wants his loved ones to remember him.
So I think that's almost like cheating at the end of a test. You know what I mean? Like you can't then just. It almost doesn't matter what you write down. It's how you lived your life. So the punctuation matters, but it's the sentence is your life,
Yeah.
right? So, I mean, maybe I'm looking at it wrong. I don't fully understand that, but I mean, it doesn't matter what you wrote down if your life's told a different story.
I agree.
No, I'm with you on that one, brother, because I was thinking like I could have said anything at the end, wrote a whole letter about, where the millions of
when I
dollars
heard
is,
that-
but no.
I heard that term. I was a little puzzled by it. An ethics letter. What does that mean? So I went and checked it out, and that's okay. I can write anything when I'm getting ready to leave here. Doesn't mean it's true,
Yeah.
but that's how I think of myself. Now, the next person may look at me totally different. My family may look at me totally different. That might not be the man that raised me. That wasn't the man that I lived with. That's his perception of himself.
isn't that kind of like writing your own eulogy?
Kind of. I would think so.
Yeah,
I would think so.
You should do that.
You should live
now.
it. Yeah.
Right, while you're alive, you write your eulogy and keep revising
Yeah.
it. How you want people to think of you when you're passed is how you should live today. So it's no point in writing your eulogy when you only have 12 minutes left on the clock, right? It doesn't matter then.
Because I know most of you, or some of you anyway, have went to funerals and the minister say, there's not much I can say. He's lived his life. He's lived his own eulogy. I can give you his name, his birth, and his death. But you know him. He's lived this life before us. So there's nothing I can say about him to you that you don't already know. What he's going to talk to you now about those that are left behind.
So one of the things that, I know we just spoke about it a little bit earlier that we haven't touched on, but I was hoping that we will touch on before it's too late, is the financial part of it. Because especially in the African American community, it's period. Financial literacy is not really present. So in the African American community and in many of our public schools, it is all but void of financial literacy. So I think that's also an important legacy that you pass on to your children, starting when they're young, teaching them about financial responsibility, what to do when given money, how to be responsible with that. But then also, starting off when they were younger, I fortunately enough had pretty good credit. So getting them credit cards when they were younger for them not to use, but to help build their credit history, because a good credit history also can be established when they're 12 years old. By the time they're in their 20s, they have 10, 15 years of credit history. These type of things are also vastly important, and then setting them up for success. I do know the saying is weak times or hard times create strong men create easy times create weak men create hard times, right? I'm very fortunate and blessed. My wife and I have been blessed beyond what I could ever ask for. But our boys have been raised to experience things in life, but not to feel entitled to those things. So that's also really important. That's also part of legacy that I just wanted to make sure that we touched on before we put a period at the end of this sentence.
Very well.
I fully agree with you. I've been teaching my kids about finances ever since they were 12 years old. And if they know at least a few things, it's going to be all the credit bureau's names and exactly what a credit score can max out at. So hopefully they do right with that knowledge as they progress on forward and forward. But yes, it has to start in the home when it comes to the financial literacy, because clearly the education system is failing us in that particular aspect of things. But if you as a parent also fail a child, then where does that leave them? So, step your game up, go ahead out there and make yourself financially literate so your children could be blessed later.
Absolutely.
And I know we're running out of time, so I'm just real quick. First of all, just like I said, thanks for setting this up, because we need more of these like podcasts where men can sit down and talk about things that we don't really talk about. Other than this, when was the last time you sat down and talked about a legacy? Other than this, when did somebody tell you we need to talk about and educate our children on finances? Getting them exposed to things. So we need forums like this, so that we can talk about it, and not just one time. The men here that came out, they got exposed to things that we go to gamut from. I don't know, how old are you, man? No. 20. How old are you? 18. Okay, so we go from 18 up to, Harvey, you're the oldest, and somewhere in your 70s, and I'm close behind you, But we need to, part of the legacy is passing things on also, not just talking about them, but sitting down and saying, here's what you need to be exposed to. Here's what you need to look at, And so I may not be here forever, but then I got him, so I can pass things on, because he may not be here forever. Then he got his son, or daughter that's coming along. So we need to expose them, and this is the form that we need to do that we haven't been doing it in.
Well, we're running out of time, but I want to thank you, men, for coming out. I hope the conversation that we had this evening, and those that are viewing online, think about this. I think this is thought-provoking, that those that are not aware of a legacy, what we should be looking at, what we should be doing, teaching our kids, both male and female, that it's worthwhile. So this is not the end. I think this is the beginning of future conversation that we can have to teach those that are coming behind us how to develop a enduring legacy for their loved ones, their family, their friends. And with that, I want to thank you guys again. I think it was very interesting, very informative, and we will develop more forums dealing with these type of issues so we can educate those that are coming behind us. And with that, we'll close with that. Thank you all. Thank the audience for their participation, and we look forward to having you guys in the future. Thank the audience for tuning in, and I hope all is going well. And with that, I will say good night, and we hope to see you next time around. Thank you.